real success stories told by the people who lived them.
We're going to have some guests on this show that everybody knows, and we're going to have guests on this show that nobody knows yet.
One by one, Nick Hyder is adding hits to the hit streak.
Blessings, folks. Welcome back to another episode of the Hit Streak. I'm your man, Nick Hyder, and joining me all the way from Los Angeles, right here in the Hit Lab today, I've got an extra special treat for you. If you can't tell, I'm kind of a fan. I'm kind of a fan of this guy right here. I'm so happy to have him on the Hit Streak with me today. Folks, let me read some stuff that this guy has done because it's, and I hope you can sit down because we're going to be here for a minute. He's been all over the place. You have seen him on BET's Club Comic View. You've seen him on It's Showtime at the Apollo. You've seen him on Comedy Central Presents Doug Williams. Might have gave it away right there. You've seen him on The Mind of the Married Man. You've seen him on The Bernie Mac Show. Folks, the list goes on and on and on. He is my favorite comedian. To the point where I'm stalking him, following him around, catching his shows all over the place in the islands and everything else. Folks, help me and welcome the one and only Doug Williams to the podcast. Thank you for hanging, baby.
Oh, man, thanks for having me. I can't believe it, man. I'm on the hit streak, baby. Yeah. You know, this was a hidden thing. When I met you, you're so humble. You never told me that you had this super podcast, that you played baseball, that you were into music. This guy's just like the quiet storm. I just told him before we started, he's like Clark Kent. You know how Clark Kent is just this boring guy that you meet, you know, with the glasses or whatever. Who knew you were Superman, that you had a cape on under your shirt the whole time? I never knew, man. I'm glad to be here.
Well, today I'll be Robin and you be Batman because that's how it really is. You know what I'm saying? Well, dude. So first of all, like the first time I caught your act, and my friends and my wife and I, we love going to comedy shows. It's one of our favorite things to do. And this was before I met you, before all the COVID and the pandemic happened and everything else. We caught your act, and I was just blown away. And we kept thinking, like, man, like we've seen that guy before. And then I went back and did my research later, and that was when I saw your pretty face on the Bernie Mac show, and that was where I realized I had seen you before because we were a big fan of that show.
Yeah, Bernie Mac show, man, that was great. You know, it was a bittersweet thing with Bernie Mac when I did that because I did it the last season. And I did it two episodes before the season ended. And we got along so great that he told the producers, he was like, hey, look, if we come back for another season, I want to make this guy a reoccurring character on the show because we hit it off so well. And it's funny because when we did the episode, he had a disease called sarcoidosis. My father actually has it. And it really weakens your immune system. So he was trying his best. And I've said this in interviews before, that set was COVID, way before COVID, because his immune system was so weak that if he caught like a cold, it took him an elongated time to get over that. Man. So you had to come in, you had to wash your hands. They didn't want you to touch him. You know, you had to give him an elbow bump. And he was just trying to survive. And what's ironic about it is that he said, you know, I'm trying to just survive. Because I said, man, when you going back out on tour, when you going to do? He's like, man, I just really can't be around people until I get a grasp on this disease. So it was a bittersweet thing because he actually predicted his demise in a sense by telling me he was trying his best not to get sick, not to come in contact with people. And ultimately, that's kind of what did him in. So great guy, though. Great guy.
Man, well, he was it was definitely like, a lot was lost when we lost him in the entertainment world and just people feeling good, having, you know what I'm saying, made people feel good. So you hate to see people like that. Feels like they're gone too early, but man, what an impact they made when they were here, right?
Yeah, he was a great guy, man. He, it was my first time like being on a set while my mother was here. My mother was visiting from Montgomery, Alabama, and she was here. And I went on the set and they told her all this stuff about what you couldn't do, you can't touch, how everything had to be sterilized. And I told Bernie when we were practicing, we were rehearsing, the scene, I said, hey man, my mother's in town and, I know what's going on, but she's never been on a TV set. I kind of want to bring her. And he was like, what? Your mother's in town? And he stopped everything. And he was like, look, his mother's in town. If he doesn't show up tomorrow with his mother, don't let him on the set. In fact, Your mother is your ticket to getting on this set tomorrow. If she is not with you, you cannot come. And I brought my mom, and he hugged her. They sung church songs, and it was one of those things that will stay with me and my mom, for the rest of your life. The kindness that he showed, considering the restraints that he had that were placed on that set, and he just threw all that out of the way and just embraced my mom.
Man, that's what a professional will do, man. That's what a master of his craft will do. So, folks, check it out. If you're listening to us while you're driving, don't get out your phone and try to follow him on Instagram just yet. Pull over to traffic light stop or wait till you get somewhere. But on Instagram, you can find him at Mr. Douglas Williams, and he's got a great website, dougwilliams.net. And most importantly, you can find out where you can catch him in his upcoming gigs right then and there, right? So, man, like... It's so cool to see, who you've become and all the success you've had up to this date. However, I feel like you're just getting started. Like, it feels like the momentum is with you now more than ever. But man, like, I'm so intrigued. How does somebody become a comedian? Because, like, how does somebody become a business owner or a pastor or whatever they do? It's something you're called to do, but then you got to have as my dad would say, you got to have the cojones to go out there and make it happen, right? So talk to me a little bit about, like, I know you were born and raised in Montgomery, Alabama. Is any comics other than Doug from Montgomery, Alabama that I know of? Like, I mean, that's not like...
I'm the only one.
Damn,
now, we do have a lot of stars that have come from there. Octavia Spencer is from there. We do have a lot of people who have come from there. The great dancer, Twitch, that unfortunately... left us, that was on the Ellen DeGeneres show. He's from Montgomery, Alabama. So it's rich in history. Nat King Cole is from there. Obviously, the civil rights movement started there with Dr. King and Ralph Abernathy. But I think I'm a comedian who has had, television appearances that come out of Montgomery, Alabama. But
well, I'm starting a petition right now that we need a Doug Williams lane or avenue or street in Montgomery, Alabama, somewhere.
Absolutely.
I'm starting a petition right now. Well, dude, tell me about like your past and kind of like walk us through the story about how you got here today. Kind of like, go back as far as you want to.
Well, at first for me, it was about, I started out as a rapper. A lot of people, have seen my interviews online. And I started out as a rapper. I was rapping. And, at that time in the mid 80s, Run DMC had just come out, Hard Times. And rap was serious. You had Curtis Blow. You had all these people, making a political statement. Public Enemy came out of that. And so the mentality of the rap group was to be serious. And, every time it would come to me, I would have these jokes about fat women in spandex and eating chicken with grease on your lips and stuff. And, and it would just kill the flow. They would be talking about, trying to pay your rent and, hard times and the white man keeping us down. And then when that came to me, I would be like, yeah, and fat women love chicken. And when you kiss them, you get grease on your lips. And so they were like, yo, man, you kind of killing the flow. And then somebody said, you could be a comedian, man. You're more suited for comedy. And I was like, yeah, I never really thought about that. So, my first year of college was at, funny as it was at a Christian college, Seventh-day Adventist college, Oakwood College. People can look that up, Oakwood College in Huntsville. And so when I got there, that was burned in my brain. And then, when they said that, I started watching Richard Pryor. I started watching different comedians, Red Fox. And I was like, because the whole goal with even my rapping was just to be comical and entertain.
Yeah.
So this is, really in the same lane. And I'd had the experience of being on stage because we did like a lot of local talent shows. So I was comfortable with the mic. I was comfortable being on stage. So I found this comedy club in Huntsville, Alabama. And I went in and they were having an open mic night. And ironically, the house MC was leaving. I never will forget it. He was a midget. I don't know if you can say midget now. What's the political correct term? Everything is not, little person.
Super little person. I don't know. Like,
yeah, super little person.
But they're superheroes.
The superhero little person was leaving.
That's right.
They were having a contest, and I went in and to do the contest. I lost. I was horrible. But the owner of the club really liked me, man. He said, man, I think you really have talent. So they gave a first place prize to whomever won. And he told me, he said, I want to make you the house MC. And it just so happened the first comedian that was coming in, he said, I'm going to get this guy to work with you. You know, he's been here before, and I'm going to tell him about you. And I want you to spend this first week learning from him. Let him be your mentor. And the first guy was Steve Harvey. Wow. So Steve Harvey was like my first mentor. And I have pictures I posted on Instagram, you know, and, you know, I'll give you I think it's, anyway, I posted on Instagram. It's online. A picture of me and Steve Harvey, my first week doing stand-up comedy in Huntsville.
Wow. Man, it's like, that'd be like meeting Babe Ruth the first time you start playing baseball, man. You know what
exactly.
I mean?
He really took a liking to me too. And, you know, the thing about Steve was he was always a snazzy dresser. And I remember this vividly, and I did a post about it, is that, you know, at the time I still had the rap in me. So I would go on stage almost looking like LL Cool J. I had to warm up. And so the first night that I went on, I was dressed like that. And when it was over, Steve said, hey, man, you know, this is not a rap concert. You know, this is your place of business. Dress like you're going to work. You got to dress better than that. And he was like, tomorrow, do better. And the next night, I came back, you know, LL Cool J / Run DMC. And he was like, well, I guess you won't be working tonight. And I said, what do you mean? He's like, no, man, I told you don't come back like that. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, good thing you early. He said, because you got about 45 minutes to run back to your dorm or wherever and change clothes. I was like, are you serious? He's like, yeah, I'm dead serious. So I ran back to my dorm room. I put on a button-up shirt, some slacks, and I came back. I made it back just in time to start the show. And he was like, hey, I'm going to talk to you after the show. So after the show, he was like, look, man, I'm going to tomorrow meet me at my hotel at like noon. And he said, I'm going to take you shopping. And I'm going to buy you some nice clothes. And keep in mind, at this time, Steve wasn't Steve Harvey. Yeah. He had just done the Apollo, and he was touring, and he wasn't even selling out comedy clubs. And he took me that next day, man, and he bought me like about 5 different shirts and 5 different pants to go with it. And it was just I'll never forget that as long as I live. Him doing that and him starting me on my comedy journey.
Man, that is incredible. That is incredible. Of all people, we're big Steve Harvey fans at home. Absolutely love him. We listen to his early morning stuff, and I'm blown away at how great of a thinker he is.
Yeah.
Profound.
Absolutely.
Like profound almost. As a businessman, this how he talks about treating people, and he's just it's like he's documented everything that's happened to him throughout his life, and he's been able to take that knowledge as he's learned it and apply it the very next day to the very next step. It's just like, it's such an amazing thing to see.
Absolutely.
All right, so take me on. So and by the way, that's what he just told you guys, all you folks that are trying to get somewhere or looking to take your next leap, your next step, folks. Like we talk about that here a lot. Like, you know, the way you look isn't people. A lot of people will judge a book by its cover, and the way you look ain't everything. However, like, why create an obstacle for yourself to overcome? You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, we're looking for opportunities, not obstacles. So,
absolutely.
Oh man, I'm telling you. So, that was a very valuable lesson that he gave you that day. And some people say, "What a jerk! He made you go home and change." But that was a great lesson.
Right. You know, and what he was trying to, what he actually did impose upon me is that whenever you, and obviously as you go on in the business, you learn different things or whatever. But the lesson to that, he was trying to put me in the mind frame of doing a job, you know, and anytime you dress up for something, anytime you make special provisions for something, you take it more serious. So when you have to take time to put on a nice shirt and put on these things when you're starting out and go there, it causes you, and it worked for me. It changed my mentality about what I was doing, because when I was just dressing like a rapper, it was like a plaything. But he said, hey man, this is a business too. And he was the first one to break down show business to me. And Steve, and if you talk to a lot of comedians whom he has mentored, he would always say, you know, show business is 2 words. It's show business. And if you don't take care of the business, there is no show. So that is what he infused in me that week of working. And it turned out to be a blessing for me. And to have that someone to instill those type of principles in me. Because think about it. I mean, you played baseball, you know, think about, you know, like you said, a big time, a person who's been playing baseball for a long time and you just starting out, telling you the things that don't necessarily go on the field, but help you get to the field, being on time, showing up, watching film, culcating those type of things into you. That makes a huge difference.
That's right. Well, it's hard to be a professional at something if you don't have professionalism in the way you carry yourself.
Exactly. You summed it up in that phrase.
So tell what happened after that. So Steve Harvey gave you a good lesson, gave you a shot. Take me forward from there.
So after I just did 1 year at Oakwood College, and I decided that I wanted to go to Alabama State University. I'm actually wearing Alabama State University shirt, Alabama State ASU. So I decided to go to HBCU, Historic Black College University. I decided to go there my next year. So I go to Alabama State University. And while I'm there, I'm still doing comedy, on the weekends, I'm traveling. And I met the person over the theater department. Her name was I met the doctor over the theater department at Alabama State, Tonea Stewart. If you look her up online, Dr. Tonea Stewart, she was in the Heat of the Night that shot in Georgia. And so I asked her, I said, hey, is there any way I could just, take some of the theater classes? I'm doing stand-up comedy because I majored in communications.
Okay. And
she was like, yeah, you don't have to be a major. We'll come. She took a liking to me. So I started doing little things in the theater, little plays, little improv things that they were doing. And she turned me on. She was having a showcase. And she turned me on. She had a manager that came in. She turned me on to this manager, and the manager liked me. And she said, hey, you got to come to Los Angeles. So I decided, coming up to that summer that I would move. I stayed in contact with her, and I moved out to Los Angeles. I stayed on a friend's couch. And it just so happened when I came, they were auditioning for The Nutty Professor with Eddie Murphy and the director, Tom Shadyac. So she set me up for an audition with for that movie, The Nutty Professor.
Wow.
So I go in and I meet Tom Shadyac. I told him I just got into LA and I was a comedian. And he puts up this picture of Eddie Murphy in the fat suit. Now, I didn't know it was Eddie Murphy because he was like, hey, because I botched the audition. I'm going to just keep it real. I mean, the lines, I completely botched the audition. It was one of my first auditions. I was nervous. But again, he took a liking to me. So he said, hey, man, just put the audition down. Don't worry about the audition. And he put up Eddie Murphy, a picture of Eddie Murphy. He said, if this guy was in the audience and you were doing your show and he heckled you, what are some of the things that you would say to him? So Eddie Murphy was fat. So I had a bunch of stock fat lines like, you're so fat, if we cut you, you bleed chocolate milk, you're so fat that your blood type is Rocky Road. I just started saying these things and he was laughing. He was like, yeah. He said, you know what, man? He said, I like you. He said, the fact that you're so new out here, you're so innocent, gives an authenticity to you. So he said, you booked the part. I'm going to call you in a few weeks and you're going to be on the set. So I was like, great. So I went back and I told the manager, I said, hey, I booked the Nutty Professor. She said, really? So she called and she said, well, we haven't heard anything from him, but you sure? I said, yeah, I booked it. So about 3 weeks went by. She was like, yeah, you booked it. And out of the blue, he called and the people called. And that's how I got the part. And if you go watch that movie, The Nutty Professor, I bring out Dave Chappelle, Reggie Warrington to the club when he comes out and he talks about Eddie Murphy. And they actually used some of the lines that I did in that audition. Dave Chappelle uses those lines when he's talking about Eddie Murphy, who is Professor Clump in the movie.
That's right. That's one of the funniest scenes, man, from that movie. It is hysterical.
And to be there and watch him do it, to watch him unfold, it blew my mind away. And I actually met my wife. My wife was an extra on the set. She played one of the waitresses in the club. I actually met her, and this was in 95, like March of 95. I met my wife on that set because we started dating after that. So that movie did a lot for me. It was my first time on camera, my first appearance as an actor, my first time meeting Eddie Murphy. I met my wife. So that movie is indelible in my mind. It'll always be, if that's the right word, in my mind.
Absolutely. Well, I can't wait. So my son loves that movie, and he watched it. He watched it probably like 2 months ago. He's going to go back in, and I'm going to show him who I interviewed today, and show him. It's going to be cool.
Like 2 scenes, and you go back, you'll see me. I was probably about 25, 30 pounds lighter, but wow. I was there.
Man, that is awesome. All right, so I mean, golly, who else is bigger in comedy that you haven't mentioned their names already? I mean, you've told 3 stories: Bernie Mac, Steve Harvey, and Dave Chappelle. Three of the goats of all of stand-up comedy. That's incredible, dude. And you're just getting started, and this is happening.
And I went from that. It's so funny that I went from that. Here's another quick. I'm just giving you these quick stories, man.
Come on.
I've written about these. So before I left to come out to Los Angeles. You know, my major was print journalism. So I was doing entertainment stories for Alabama State University, and I was interning at the Montgomery Advertiser in Montgomery. So Sinbad was doing this Black College Coca-Cola tour.
Okay.
So he was coming to Alabama State University. So the paper, the newspaper there, I think it was called, I can't remember the name of the Hornet something at the time, set up an interview for me to interview Sinbad. So I interviewed Sinbad. I told him I was a comedian and that, you know, and being green, I just say, man, is there any way you can help me? Anything you can do for me? And he was like, you know what? That's such a broad ask. Cause he said, you know, how can I really help you? What can I do for you? You know what I mean? He's like, you're here. He said, but what I will do is if you move to Los Angeles, he told me I would have to move to, if I'm ever in a position, he said that question should always be framed, if you're ever in a position to help me. Because, you know, it's so ambiguous to just say, help me. So anyway, you know, I wrote the thing on him. I went to the show, and you're talking about somebody who rocked a crowd full of college students clean. You know, he's clean. Never because he rocked them. So right after I did The Nutty Professor, as fate would have it, and I believe in God, as God would have it, another audition came in for this movie called First Kid with Sinbad. So I told my manager, said, hey, you got to get me the audition with Sinbad. I know him. I wrote a story on him. So she called and said, hey, you know, he knows Sinbad, blah, blah, blah. So they set up an interview, an audition. So I went in, I auditioned for it, and Sinbad wasn't at the first audition. So I made it past the first audition. So they told me at the next audition, Sinbad is going to be there. So I was like, thank God. So when I walked in the door, instantly Sinbad looked and he pointed at me. And I said, hey, you said. So I did the audition. And when I left out, they actually went in a different direction. They used an older white guy because I was playing a security guard at the mall. They used an older white guy, but he was a man of his word. He was like, hey, I got to do something for this guy. I told him if I'm ever in a position. So they created a part for me. So it was a small part and it actually got cut down. But if you go watch The First Kid with Sinbad, you'll see me in that movie too. You'll see me in the credits. My name was A.D.D in that. And I just want to send a quick shout out because Sinbad had a stroke. Yeah. It's public that he's been dealing with that stroke. Yeah. He's asked for donations. I mean, I think there's a site up where you can go contribute. But praying for Sinbad, much love, and I hope he gets back. One of the nicest people in showbiz whom I've ever met, bar none, is Sinbad. So if anybody deserves some help, some donations, please do that for Sinbad.
Absolutely. There's we'll find that link. It'll be in the show notes. Notes. Yes. And we can help out on that for sure, man. I mean, this is just getting better and better and better, right? So, all right, keep on going. This is fantastic. What happened next?
So, you know, I just kind of trudged around here in Los Angeles. And so a lot of people don't know this because I'm going to put it in my book. But I'm married to a Puerto Rican. My wife is Puerto Rican from New York, the South Bronx.
Attaboy.
Comes from projects, you know that Rosie Perez type of thing. So, you know, she's an actress too. And you can look my wife up. She actually was in the 3rd season of a show called On My Block on Netflix. It's a huge show, especially with the younger generation. It's called On My Block. The 3rd season, she plays Cuchillos, she's like a female El Chapo.
Gotcha.
She is the antagonist that whole season, the 3rd season of On My Block. Anyway, we got into a big argument one day, you know, just as couples do, taking our frustrations out on each other. And I grabbed her. And I shook her. And, you know, we were arguing and, you know, grabbing and touchy-feely. And so unbeknownst to us, the neighbors called the police. You know, we stayed next to white people. White people hear a bunch of, you know, I don't know if you can say, you know, MF, I don't know, you know, the clean thing, but, you know, soon as white people hear motherfucker, hey, they instantly associate motherfucker with, pow, 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 shots are coming next. So they heard me say motherfucker a couple of times, like, hey, call the cops. So they called the police, and then the police came, and when they must have told them that it was some serious stuff going on. Because normally police will knock on the door.
Yeah.
And they say, hey, what's going on? They came with their guns drawn. When I opened the door,
oh no,
I looked down the barrel of a gun. I'm like, hey, and they're like, what's going on? We got a call and there was some, tussling over here. And we instantly went into, hey, we just auditioning, we practicing the scene for a movie, and then I had to grab her and, choke her a little bit and everything. And they were like, come on, man. So they arrested me. They took me down. And, I didn't fight it. One thing about me, I admitted, that it was a scuffle or what have you. So I got arrested for domestic violence. And I pled no contest. And I had to take like a year of domestic violence classes, which turned out to be the best thing that could have ever happened to me. And I always say this is that, we're taught to do a lot of things. But one thing we're not taught in school, and they should, is how to maintain a healthy relationship. And those classes taught me how to maintain a healthy relationship. They taught me boundaries, how to keep things from escalating, how to de-escalate things. And as a result of those classes, it actually saved my relationship. And now I'm married. I've been married to my wife for 20 years through taking those courses. But as a result of those courses, I wrote a one-man show called Domestic Violator. And it got a lot of buzz here in town. And I got with this agency called AMG, which was Mike Ovid's company. And as a result of being that, they sent me in for an interview with Mike Binder. If you look up Mike Binder, he's done a lot of things. He has a documentary, comedy documentary on that played on HBO about the Comedy Store. I'm in that documentary. And he put me on this show called Mind of the Married Man. I was the only single guy on the show. So that's how I got on HBO as a result of that. Who knew, all I had to do was choke somebody a little bit and it was career. So that happened.
It's crazy how, I hear it in church all the time that, we're born to struggle, and the struggle is how we find our Christ-likeness, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's how it goes. If everything was easy and went as we thought it should be to our plan, there wouldn't be like how many people would actually get led that way and find their faith, right? So, that was something that, being an athlete, when I remember my dad telling a story about when he came home from boot camp, he said, I was sitting at my in-laws like dinner table when I first got back, and I dropped like 3 F-bombs, not even thinking about it, because that was just how people spoke there. I was that way as an athlete. That was just common language. It's still something I'm trying to wear off. You know what I'm saying? But but like, you do an unbelievable job. I was immediately drawn to your show because it's very cutting edge, but at the same time, there's it's faith based, it's faith driven, I should say.
Absolutely.
And how important it is to you to you're there to entertain the people and to make them feel good. Which is the most like unselfish thing you can do. A lot of times, if you're the star and you're on stage, you make it about you. You never do that. And then my son, he wears his bracelets all the time. Mine's in my office back there. I meant to put it on. I took it off when I was getting dressed. But got your bracelets. God is good all the time, right?
And all the time, God is good. That's right. During that whole ordeal, when I was arrested, I was in jail. That's when you have an opportunity. They like to say eyes to the ceiling all night long, but you have an opportunity to reflect. And, I was brought up in the church, and, it was just a matter of me getting back to those type of things, just centering myself, because I wasn't brought up like that to be aggressive with women. But, you get in this world, man, you get out there and you get to living. And you get caught up in life, and you start to move away from your values, especially here in LA, because whatever small problems you have or whatever deficiencies you have, LA will multiply those. In other words, if you curse a little bit, you'll curse like a sailor. Yeah. If you drink a little bit, you can become an alcoholic. So I just got back to that and realized how good God had been to me and prayed. And, And I was so anti the domestic violence classes at first, because I was sitting in there, and the funny thing, if there isn't anything to be funny about a subject that serious, is that I was there, and most of the guys there were foreigners, because foreigners that in those other countries, women are very submissive, and they got over here and they got to dealing with American women, So I learned so much from that class. I consider it one of the best things that has happened to me in my life, and I think that every man should take a domestic violence class, whether you've been accused of domestic violence or not. You should go, because those classes go so far beyond just domestic violence. It's a mind frame that they concatenate into you, and it's amazing. It saved my life, and it saved my my relationship with my girl that ultimately became my wife.
That's right. Well, you and even in your shows, you tell a little bit about your story and how those things, how you got to where you're at briefly, and how you use those experiences. Somebody I heard not long ago that the person that you're most fit to help is the person that you used to be. And
right.
You know what I mean? That hit me a lot, and that's why it's so important to tell your story.
Absolutely.
So, all right. So, you've added a piece to your resume that you're not proud of. Now, what happens next, right? So, keep us going.
So, yeah, I really dove into my stand-up comedy. I was blessed and fortunate enough to be able to do a BET special. Blessed and fortunate enough to do a Comedy Central special, and my wife and I formed a production company. We have a production company, and we almost had a show that got picked up. We have some more shows in the pipeline, and that's what we've been doing now. So I've been doing my stand-up. I'm shooting a documentary right now.
Okay.
About my life and about this journey that we're talking about. It's going to be called Get 'Em Doug. I teamed up with this magazine called Comedy Hype. They have a YouTube channel. They're, immersed in hip hop comedy, the comedy world in general. They're called Comedy Hype. And I'm working with them right now to do this documentary. So we just shot about a week ago. We went to Montgomery, Alabama. We interviewed my pastor. We interviewed teachers, my parents, my sister. So this is going to be a really, really interesting documentary. And then I'm slated to do another comedy special with Comedy Hype. The documentary is going to dead end into a comedy special. So we're probably going to tape that in Montgomery, Alabama. I would venture out to say probably this summer. We're going to tape that. So that's what I'm working on right now. So
that's awesome.
Just enjoying the thing I love about stand-up comedy is that it's such a rewarding job. It really embodies that cliche saying of do something you love to do and you'll never work a day in your life, because I don't feel like this is work. I feel like it's therapy on my end, because it gives me a chance to get up and talk and, express myself and get things off my chest. But we're at a time in this country where I feel like we just need to laugh. We've gotten so politically correct.
Amen.
So, tense. If you say this group of people gets mad. And if you say that, this group, and we're not living in that time where, we had Good Times, Sanford and Son, All in the Family. Can you imagine those television shows on right now? I mean, you can't even conceive that, because we're just living in such a stressful, racial powder keg time.
Yeah.
That we need. And a lot of my show makes fun. I make fun of white people, Black people, Asian people. My theme is, if we can laugh at each other, we can love each other, because we love things that make us laugh. So I just feel a sense of purpose now, and a sense of being called to duty. Like, when you call to military, to make people laugh and to forget about the nonsense that's happening in the world.
That's right. Well, man, anybody that's achieved any type of success, ain't nobody undefeated in nothing. We all get knocked down. We learn. We grow. That's the way we think: you win or you learn, right? No, you never lose, as long as you. And we don't like quitting, but we will finish things, right? So,
that's right. Absolutely.
They look and smell the same, but they're not. And so when especially in show business, it's like, until you're in, you're not in, and it's always audition this, and it's almost like just a game of sales. You're selling yourself. How many auditions does it take to get a callback, and how many callbacks does it take to get another callback to the part, and so on and so forth, right? So, we have a lot of folks that come here for mindset inspiration from people like you, right? So talk to me a little bit about, obviously there's no doubt, you mentioned that show business is 2 words. You got the show, right? But the business is the part that'll eat you up. And eat you alive, right? So talk to me about how you've made it this long in business. You had to develop a business mind. Look, I played as far as I could in baseball because if that was show business, I didn't get the business part at that time. It ate me alive. I was just happy to be there and play. If I was playing today with the knowledge I have today, it'd be a totally different story. So walk me through how you learned some lessons along the way and all that good stuff.
I neglected to say during all of this, man, just to go to show you, your mind. I came up with the concept. I always wanted to be on Def Comedy Jam. If people research that, it launched the careers of Martin Lawrence, Bernie Mac. Bernie Mac came from Def Comedy Jam. Chris Tucker, Eddie Griffin. And I always wanted to be on that show. And whenever I would try, for whatever reason, I never got selected. So from working on Mind of the Married Man, I worked with Mike Binder, and he would always tell me, why don't you create what it is you want to do? Why don't you come up with something, and make it your own instead of trying to be a part of somebody else's thing? Do it yourself. And so I took that to heart. So we went out. I partnered up with this guy, I'm still partners with Rob Markovich, and we went out and we raised money and we shot a show called The First Amendment. And that show is and I teamed up with Martin. We shot the first season, and then I went out. I reached out to Martin Lawrence. And he and I became partners off of the idea that I created. And we came up with Martin Lawrence Presents the First Amendment Stand-Up. I'm leaving. I can't believe I forgot to mention this. This is a huge part of my resume. So people can look that up online. It's called Martin Lawrence Presents the First Amendment Stand-Up. It's on YouTube.
It's fantastic. We've watched it.
And I hosted that show, but I created it. I produced it. I hosted. It was the first original program on Starz Network. They have a show out that came out almost at the same time. They're bringing it back. It's called Party Down. But it was Martin Lawrence Presents the First Amendment, then Party Down, then Spartacus. But we led the way in that. And we're actually trying now to reboot that show because we feel like if there's ever a time for the First Amendment stand-up, it's now. So, that we did 5 seasons of that show, and it's a great show. Launched the careers, not necessarily solely launched the careers, but it was a part of, we had Leslie Jones on that show before she was who she is now. We had Kim Jong-un on that show. You see him on The Mask. He was, big time movie star. We had a lot of people came through. One of the things I love about it was one of probably the last TV appearances of Dick Gregory. Okay. We had him on before we ended. Sheryl Underwood was on there. We had Dion Cole, who's doing things on there. So a lot of people came, and blessed us with their talents on that show. So that was a huge part of my stand-up development. And to this day, and somebody told me this for Black History Month. I didn't know this, but I am the only Black man to produce, host, and create a stand-up comedy series that ran 5 seasons on a major network. Now Starz is a major network, so I'm in the history books as that. So
boom, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
man. Well, that was I remember when I first saw that. As a matter of fact, when I went back to look you up after I'd seen your show the first time to figure out, I was like, man, I was trying to place you. That was the first thing that popped up. My wife and I actually watched all of it. In a couple of nights we binged it, and the set was cool. It was like the production levels were like top notch, man. They were so good.
You put so much money. In fact, we put so much money. I mean, my pay took a hit. Had I put more money in my pocket, I'd be a millionaire. But it was the first show, so we really wanted to put a lot of emphasis on making that show big. But that show was great, man. It was great because at the time we did that show, there was a void for especially Black hip hop comedians, and maybe that's not the right term, hip hop, but urban to a degree, and I'm still probably not doing it justice. But just underground comedians, of that ilk, that Def Jam ilk, it was a void, and we fill that void for them to be able to go, because a lot of those comedians weren't going to be on late night television. They weren't going to be on, the late night talk show circuit because of their language and their experiences and what they were talking about. So, I take great pride in the fact that we were able to put that show on and give opportunities to comedians that might not have had them otherwise.
Giving back, man, giving back. So what were some other things that you learned as far as the business goes? Because look, it's not easy. It's very competitive what you're doing. And it's, the wins, it's almost like the wins are big, but it's hard. There's so many losses in between when you're trying to do those things. It's just like what we do. It's no different. It's just a part of the journey. You learn along the way, and but you celebrate the wins and you don't dwell on those losses, right? So how did you keep going no matter what came about or what happened to you?
I've always learned, I learned early on in this business, and I can't remember who told me this. This is probably, a wise comedian. We all stand around after the comedy club, we talk. And one of the things that resonated with me, and this is just a lesson in life, is never let success go to your head and never let failure go to your heart. And that's a great lesson. And I tell my kids that never let success go to your head and never let failure go to your heart. And so, I had some bumps along the road. I'm sure people saw the whole thing with Jamie Foxx. I did that roast. That was early on in my career. And that was almost a moment that could have broke me at the time, because, I was an unknown and he was such a big star. And when that happened, in anything, in basketball and football, you reach a point in time where you deal with adversity. And adversity will either take you under or to make you a stronger, better person. And that made me a stronger, better person, man. It reinforced in me how bad I wanted to do this, because in anything, and I always like to say this to young people that are listening, in anything, you're going to come up against adversity. And you have to make a decision before you start the journey. Am I going to fold or am I going to keep going? And so, that and just being out here in Los Angeles, man, you see so many, this is really a city of Sodom and Gomorrah, man. I've seen so many people succumb to drugs and alcohol. We just recently had a thing where we lost a lot of comedians because of fentanyl and these parties out here. This is truly a place where you can lose your soul. Yeah. And my saying now, and I'm actually having T-shirts printed that say this: sell your talent, not your soul. So many people have sold their soul and in this town. So, man, I'm happy to be where I am. I'm really happy within the skin that I'm in. You know what I mean? I can wake up every day and look in the mirror. I've never made anything, done anything to compromise my manhood here. And I don't say that in a demeaning way. I mean, I've never done anything to compromise who I am as a person. Yeah. And and that's a great feeling to be able to do that, to say that I'm doing things my way. And here's one thing that I want to relate to your viewers and just people out there. Never measure success by material things, what you have or what, you have in the bank, or what kind of car you drive, or what kind of house you live in. You'll always be miserable. I've met so many people in this town who have accomplished all of those things. They're miserable. They have the houses, the bank account, and they're miserable. I might not have all of those things, but I'm happy. And I don't think you can put a price on happiness. And that's how I look at things. And I always like to try to convey that whenever I do a show of this magnitude, the Hitstreak, when I'm on a show with Nick. And I just want to say this about you, Nick. People understand. This guy's hair is never messed up. You see how Nick's hair is right now? You see him. If you wake him up at 6 o'clock in the morning, this is the hairdo you got. I've never seen Nick have a hair out of place. How you do it, Nick? I'm bald, so I'm but you never have a hair out of place. And that you have to live life like that, like knowing you're never gonna have a hair out of place.
That's right. That's awesome. The for a minute there was a hashtag about my hair and it was trending on one of the platforms. I can't remember, man. It was something else. But well, brother, like you said so much gold in there. First of all, I've got another comedian that we like at our house is Michael Jr. And
yeah, he's really popular. Yeah, Michael Jr.'s doing big things, man.
Like him a lot, and I've got a quote here from one of his bits. He said, "Here's the analogy of the egg, the carrot, and the coffee bean. When you're put in hot water, you're going to become one of these three things." He's like, "Are you an egg that becomes hard on the outside and inside? Are you the carrot that softens, or are you the coffee bean that when you're put in hot water, you change the environment?" And
that's deep.
I'm telling you. And we have a quote on the wall out there that from William Arthur Ward, and it says, "Adversity causes some men to break, and the same adversity causes some men to break records." Right. So,
right.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, those are great quotes.
I'm telling you, the same pressure that bursts pipes makes diamonds. You know what I mean? So, adversity is something that is like if you run from it, you'll never get where you want to go. As a matter of fact, there was an analogy somebody that Hunter Bledsoe told me about the difference between cattle and bison when it comes to a storm, and he said, "Nick, who do you think spends longer in the storm, cattle or bison? Cattle run to the storm, bison run to the storm, and cattle run away from the storm. Who do you think spends the most amount of time in the storm?" And it's the cattle spend the most amount of time in the storm because they're going the same direction at different paces. Wow. The bison run right through it, so they spend least amount of time in the storm, right? So you got to take adversity head on, baby.
Wow, those some great, man. You got some great guests, man. I'm gonna have to inculcate a lot of those sayings in my everyday life. I like them. That's beautiful.
I'm telling you, and you've said, so I've had the pleasure of having a lot of amazing people share the room with me for a little bit. And what I can tell you, the cool thing about what we do is being a sports guy, I love playbooks, right? So every time we make a business model or anything like that, a strategy, we call it a playbook. And so I'm taking all the things that all of you amazing people have in common, and that's the playbook, right? So there's a word that everybody keeps using, Doug. It's called authenticity. And I think that was why I was drawn to you first is, man, what you see is what you get. You're true to yourself. You're true to your craft. You're authentic. And all those people that are successful and happy, that's something that they all have in common.
Oh, man, you know, like I said, man, happiness is, you can never underestimate happiness because I when I tell you this, I mean this. I've been around successful actors, successful comedians who have the world at their feet and they're miserable for whatever reason. They're miserable. And so I always said to myself, I would trade all of that for happiness because, you know, what good, like the Bible says, what good is it for a man to gain the world and lose his soul? So what good is it to have all of that stuff, all of those things, wealth, success, and be miserable?
That's right.
Right. So
that's right.
You know, so I live every day as a blessing. You know, God has given me a talent that I try to use to make people happy. And, you know, I sprinkle him in there, you know, like with the bracelets. And, you know, I try to give God his credit. I'm a firm believer in God.
Absolutely.
And I've just been able to make you know, Martin Luther King said it best. If I can cheer somebody with a word or song, then my living has not been in vain. That's how I try to live.
How can you be in a bad mood if you're grateful?
Right. Absolutely.
You know what I mean? That's the ultimate thing, man. So, all right. So, I do gotta ask you a little bit about how the change in comedy over the years, and then you may or may not want to give me your input on it. But you know, Chris Rock's new thing just came out, and we enjoyed it and it was good. And but you know that's all over the internet. That you know with him and the spot about Will Smith, right? So like an insider's perspective on what's going on, because the media is blowing it and taking it all kinds of different directions, right? What's it like? How's comedy changed over the years, and what's an insider's perspective of what that's going on with that right there?
Well, I think one of the ways comedy has changed over the years now is the internet now.
Yeah.
You know, wherever you go now, you see a clip of a comedian, you see this. So it's given us another lane. It's given us another avenue to get out. You know, you don't have to be a television star now. for people to know who you are or to get your material out. So, the means of getting comedy out or the platforms that you have available to get comedy out now have changed. I don't think comedy has changed in the sense. I mean, Red Fox once said every topic has been covered. So,
that's so profound.
Yeah. So, that has changed about comedy, almost like the evolution of cars now. You know what I mean? When you were coming up, you remember when we had the one seat, everybody had you in that front seat, everybody had to scoot up together, or scoot back,
That's right.
So
when you were scared and you tried to get in the car and you was jingling that you can't find the key, like that'll happen no more, right?
Yeah, your mom putting that arm out and she put the brakes off. So, it's still driving, but the technology has changed. And as far as Chris Rock and his comedy special, I thought that, I'm biased on that because I'm a Chris Rock fan. But I thought he set out to do what he wanted to do on that. I mean, if you can do, and I try to do this too, do your comedy and cause people to think or have them talking about you the next day or on the news like that, I think you've done your job. I think that, he made his special was definitely relevant. It was, close to him. It came from the heart. And I think those are all the things that make a great comedy special or a great comedy routine is when it's authentic, it comes from your heart, and you ruffle some feathers. And I think he covered all of those bases with his comedy special.
Yes, he did. And you'd referenced the thing years ago with Jamie, which that was before Jamie Foxx, which that was before the internet. You know what, man? One day Jamie Foxx gonna make fun of me, or somebody like Jamie Foxx gonna make fun of me, and I'm gonna have made it when that happens. That's how I feel about it. That's how I feel about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. I thoroughly enjoyed Chris Rock's comedy special. I just love it when people throw caution to the wind.
Yep.
He and that's what I'm saying to you is that, comedy has really, and this is a good point I want to make on your show, man. Comedy has really come under attack. Free speech has really come under attack. If you notice, when you come to my shows now, especially when I'm doing shows on a cruise ship, I always preference my shows now by telling people if you're easily offended, if you don't realize what joke, the fact that we have to say that in a comedy club, the fact that we have to overemphasize that tells you the times that we're living in. And that's what I mean by, and that goes back to your question, what has changed? That has changed.
Yeah.
Society has gotten soft now. You know what I mean? We talk about that all the time. Remember when you were coming up and you were playing baseball, you were playing a sport and you lost? Hey, you lost. You need to get better.
That's right.
But now kids lose. We try to make them feel like winners. You know what I mean? Hey, don't worry about it. You're still a winner. When we were, and I'm not saying this is right, but we were coming up, you didn't put on a helmet to ride a bicycle. You just jumped up. So we're living in such a soft society now where we're trying to appease everybody. And you can't do that.
That's right.
You can't appease everybody. Somebody's going to get offended. Somebody's going to get upset. And so now as a comedian, and I want people to understand that no comedian ever sits down to write a joke and go, who can I offend? How can I be disgusting?
Let's go.
How can I make this group of people mad? We don't do that. We just search for the funny.
That's
and
right.
whatever happens as a result of that happens, but it's never intentional. We never sit down and go, how can I offend the gay community? How can I offend white people? How can I make black people mad? And so that's what has really changed to me about comedy. Hasn't changed. The society and the environment around comedy has changed. And that just makes it so much harder. But I'm going to tell you this. When you start censoring comedians, when you stop us from being able to say what we want and do, we have truly lost free speech then. So I always tell people, censor yourself, not others. If you don't want to do something, or if you don't, then you can remove yourself from that and not be a part. But don't try to put that off on other people because, I might not necessarily be a fan of country music. But when I try to start stopping country music, hey, I don't want country music playing, or for that matter, gangster rap or whatever it is, then you're alienating. You're going outside of your lane.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we have to stop. Do what works for you, but don't try to impose that on other people.
Man, that's fantastic. We had that similar conversation with our son, who's 13 now, when it comes to stuff like that. Here's my view on that is, if we're spending too much time worried about how things affect us, it's a form of selfishness, right? Like spend that time focusing on how you make others feel and not how they make you feel, and just see what happens.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Great saying.
See what happens. So that's how we've been trying to do things at our house. And again, so I have a name. My last name is Hyder. So I'm gonna tell you a quick little story. It was one of my very first professional games, and so I'm a rookie. I'm young. Everybody are on the road. Everybody on the road that is in charge of doing all the stuff like name on the scoreboard, songs, all that kind of stuff. They know I'm a rookie. They know it's like my first or second game, and so I'm the batter that if I strike out, the whole stadium gets a free beer. Right, so I'm that guy. It's like one of my first at bats in front of a few thousand people, and to make matters worse, they spelled my name with an L in it. So it said Hitler. So you can imagine the stuff that was screamed at me. My dad was there, and my girlfriend at the time, she was just like, she couldn't take it listening to everybody. I mean, they were death threats, everything you think of over a beer, and the fact that they played a joke on me and put Hitler on the thing, man. So you know what? It's a great story now, and it's funny, but imagine if I had turned around offended and walked off the field or something like that. The people were there to see a ball game. That was my job.
Exactly. That's my point exactly.
Man, doing what you're doing, it's cool that you and your wife are both in the business. You can't see it, but in my wife is like, I love my wife. Oh my gosh, I love my wife, and I try to spend as much time with her as I can. She's my business partner on everything that we do. In our office, by choice, our desks are in the same room, sitting right next to each other. We love that. So, and tell me again. Tell me about let's give the folks a little bit more about your family. So, been married how long, and then how many kids you got, and how old are they?
So we've been married. We've been together about 27 years. We'll actually be celebrating our 20th wedding anniversary on March the 22nd of this month. So wow. We have our 20th wedding anniversary coming up. And I just met my soulmate. We have two kids, Doug Williams III and Aiden Williams, and they're both playing football. And yeah, man, I'm like you. My wife is my business partner. And, a lot of people say at first, hey, you don't want to be partners with your wife. You got to be around her for business. You got to be around. But when you find someone who has and I always push back by saying, because I've had other partners before and I've been double crossed by a partner.
That's right.
When you find somebody who has your best interest in mind and you have their best interest in mind, it's a great person to work with. Obviously we go through challenges. We deal with life. We have disagreements. We're like everybody else, man, but we try to keep God at the forefront and we love each other. And I just believe I found my soulmate. And I'm happy. I'm happy to be in business with her. And we butt heads, but at the end of the night, and I always tell my sons this is so, because it's a lot like this. When you have children and you're trying to tell them what's right or how to do something, they never perceive it as you being their number one fan or you trying to get them to do something better. They get, Dad, you're too tough on me. You're always, and I had to get my kids to buy into whenever I tell you something, whenever I see something, it's coming from a person who loves you, who wants you to succeed, so don't ever take it the wrong way because it's coming from a place or from a person who genuinely wants you to be the best that you can be. And I've adopted that with my wife. So whenever she tells me something, whenever we disagree with something, I know it's coming from a person who wants the best for me, who wants to see us succeed. And so when you adopt that mentality, then you look at your working with your wife or being around your wife from a whole different lens. And I'm sure you see it from that lens as well, because like you said, that's your partner and that's who you work with.
That's right. And it's, I learned in business a long time ago that, when you can have real conversations that aren't always comfortable, that are about business, but you've turned that switch off when the business is over and you can go have a drink with the business partner or go lay in the same bed with the business partner, that's when you know the dynamics are correct, right? That's how you know, because it's not personal and sometimes you got to leave work at home. And that took us some time to learn that as well.
Yeah, because see, then that's like that's one of the drawbacks. We can be headed for a nice love-making night, you know what I'm saying? And something happens and they could alter that, postpone it for a little while, because we had a disagreement about this, and then like, hey, don't touch me, you're not getting, So but it keeps it fresh, it keeps it exciting, and it keeps it new, man.
That's right.
Keeps it in the family.
That's right. And it can't be easy for you guys. I don't travel much without my wife, but you're on the road a lot. So
that's tough, man. That's really tough when you have kids. I mean, that's one of the casualties of being a stand-up comedian is like we're away from our families, and a lot of times things are going on at home, and you have to put that aside and make people laugh. You got to tell a joke, and I always tell my wife and I always tell people this: I don't work a job where I can go in and just be behind a cuticle or be in a bad mood and still do the job. There's some jobs where you can be in a bad mood. Hey, I'm not talking to anybody today. And you do the job. But I have to consistently, no matter what's going on in my life, get up and make people laugh and make people happy. Because, you come to a comedy show, you don't want to hear, hey, man, his kid has the flu and, so he's not feeling real funny tonight. You're like, hey, man, make me laugh, especially with black people. Let me tell you something. Black people, your dog could have gotten run over right before you go on stage. They don't want to, hey, come on, make me laugh. So, I cut my teeth in front of black audiences, and I love black audiences because they're brutally honest. Either you're funny or you're not. There's no gray area. There's no sympathy clap. Like, okay, no, you got to bring it. So that helped me to become who I am, man. Working in front of my people has really, really, helped me to hone in on my craft.
Absolutely. Well, man, like as we get close to the to the end here, is there anything else that I left out or that you want to comment on or bring up before we start to bring the show to a close?
Yeah, I just want to tell people, man, believe in yourself. One of the things about stand-up comedy is you have to believe in yourself when nobody else does. Because when you're first starting out in comedy and you're going up and you're trying those jokes or whatever, it's you in front of a room full of people with trying to make them laugh. And it doesn't, when you're nobody, my father used to always say this, and I live by this. The only person that starts out on top is a gravedigger. So everybody else, so you're trying to get your craft, you're trying to make things work. And there's so many moments. I don't know if you've ever been up in front of a room full of people trying to make them laugh and nobody laughs. Man, that's the most loneliest feeling in the world, going back, because you write these jokes like, yeah, this guy will say this, and then we'll get to this, and we'll do this, yeah, this is funny. And when they don't laugh, you don't know, like, what the hell was I thinking? Why was I, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
So I learned to believe in myself against all odds. When it didn't look like when nobody laughed, it gives you that self-confidence. And I always try to tell people that. Believe in yourself. Never let anyone deter you from what you want to do in life. Go for it. Pray, ask God to give you the strength, and go for it. So if you don't hear anything else I said on this interview, hear that. Believe in yourself and do what makes you feel happy. Never let anybody dictate your happiness. Believe in yourself and make yourself happy by doing what you love or what you want to do.
And it can't be easy. The late Glenn Fry said about Don Henley, talking about how amazing of a vocalist he was. He's like, Don Henley's the only guy that I know that could just stand on the middle of the stage with nothing behind him, no production, no nothing, and entertain people. And he basically described a comic. You know what I'm saying? You ain't got a backup band. You ain't got flashing lights and all that stuff. It's just you with usually a stool and a cup of water and a towel or something like that.
And that's why it hits so hard, because you don't have anything to blame it on. You can't say, hey, man, the drummer messed up, man. He messed that note up, that caused the... No, it's you, your ideas, that microphone, and those people. And that, I'm telling you, everybody should try it, man. Just, because it's such the rush that comes from it. It's indescribable, man. But it's a great career. I love doing it. And, thank you for having me on the show, man. This is great, man. You've always been a stand-up guy, very humble guy. You meet Nick, you never know he does the things he does, because you would never, how many times have we met, we talked online and all this, I never knew you had a podcast, man. And to me, that speaks volumes about who you are, man.
Thank you.
I always, and I teach this to my son, be humble, man. Be humble. God said, and I hear again, those who exalt themselves will be humble. Those who humble themselves will be exalted. And you embody and embrace humbleness, man. And I that's one of the characteristics that, and I don't know if people know. Now, you can be an asshole to other people. I don't know, but I'm just saying in my experience, you have been a humble guy.
It just depends on who you ask.
What are you talking about? Nick? That asshole Nick? Is that what you're talking about? Oh, you need to come down here and watch him, just spend a day with him and watch it all. But
well, you can't please everybody, and Jesus picked the group, and one of them turned out to be bad too, right? So it's
exactly.
and ain't nobody perfect.
Good point.
Folks, once again, you can keep up with Doug on his website, dougwilliams.net. On Instagram at Mr. Douglas Williams. Talk to me about where folks, they can obviously check you out on your website, but is there anything coming up that you want to promote, any shows? Like folks, my family, as you know, we love going on cruises. Right. We love going on cruises. And the first time I met Doug, it was actually on me and a couple of guys, we take a little weekend trip every year, and we figured out the best bang for the buck was you go on they do the weekend trips for those, like the old ships, like you tear them things up. And but that was where we saw it the first time. Like, they're bringing world class talent on these ships. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible.
It is. Yeah. So yeah, you can, and I work for, a couple of companies. So, you can always catch me there. But yeah, the talent on the ships, because, think about it. A lot of these cruise lines, they have, 25, 20, 26 ships. And somebody pointed this out to me. Think of a chain of comedy clubs, the Improv or what other comedy club, Funny Bones or whatever. How many do they have? I guarantee you they don't have, 26 improvs across the United States. Well, a lot of these cruise lines, they have 26, ships across the United States. So they have really become the new comedy clubs.
Yeah.
And it's a great it's great entertainment. They're really putting on some great comedians, and more popular comedians are now starting to gravitate towards doing cruise ships. So great.
I mean, they could pick from anybody, right? I mean, these companies are top of the line. I mean, some of these ships, the one that we saw you on just a few weeks ago, is like one of the nicest ships on the planet. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like the Carnival Celebration. It's unreal.
Great. And Carnival's a great company. And it's funny because everybody's following that motto. Carnival conducted a survey about 13 years ago, and they just wanted to know what people enjoyed the most about cruising. And people wrote in, by and large, comedy. So they said, because at the time there weren't any comedy clubs. They just had a comedian in the theater. He would do a couple of shows. So they just bought all into comedy, converted, made comedy clubs on their ships, and they bought into, let's give the people what they want. And it just took off. And then after COVID, a lot of the other companies said, hey man, this is really a simple formula. We don't have to worry about, somebody getting sick and they're killing the whole band or this, so all of the cruise lines now are going hard towards comedy. They're putting comedy clubs on the ships, but Carnival kind of led the way. I always say Carnival was like Tesla. They were like the first person to put the electric car, to put comedy out. And now everybody is following in their footsteps. So you're getting great shows on these cruise ships with the comedy clubs. And I just want everybody to just follow me on my website. My website will actually link you to all of my social media, because I'm not good at social media. So if you go to dougwilliams.net, it'll link you to all of my stuff. And when you follow me, if you send me a message, I always respond.
That's true.
I always take time to go on my phone and respond to whatever platform you send me a message on. I will respond. If I don't respond right away, it's because I'm traveling or I'm doing something, but I will respond. dougwilliams.net. And I'm about to put up my new schedule. It's not out yet, but I'm going to put it up and you'll be able to see that.
Perfect. Well, brother, like I say, I'm a huge fan. So this was an extra special treat for me today. I love doing this. This is one of the favorite things that I do for a living. And but days like today, it's like extra special and really worth it. And I swear, I'm promising everybody right now, before I'm done, I will be bringing him to Zanies here in Nashville, Tennessee, the great Zanies.
Yes,
man, we got to do that. We got to do.
We're gonna make it happen. We're gonna make it happen. We're gonna sell it out. We're gonna do that. Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure. You a class act, man. Like I said, I've had the pleasure of meeting you a few times now. And you just stay humble. I don't need to tell you to stay humble and keep doing what you're doing, man, because I can tell you're doing it for the love. And that's what I was taught. Steve Harvey told me that with stand up. Do it for the love and everything else will come. That's and you're doing it for the love, man. So thanks for having me on History. And by the way, I want to thank your staff too, man. Your staff, they reached out to me. They made sure that I had everything. That's and a lot of times people don't see the people behind the scenes. We just see the product on the screen. But you have a first-rate staff, and let me just be the first to thank all of them for their kindness and reaching out to me and making sure I had everything and that everything was set up for you and I to win. So a big shout out to your staff.
Thank you. Well, folks, once again, we were hanging with the great Doug Williams. Once again, check him out online, dougwilliams.net, and on Instagram at Mr. Douglas Williams. Folks, we keep bringing you amazing people, and we're not stopping now. So once again, folks, thanks so much for tuning into another episode of The Hit Streak. I am your man, Nick Hyder. God bless.